When I was 8, I learned what it meant to be second. Not in a competition or at school, but in my own home, in the quiet way my birthday vanished beneath someone else's spotlight. It was a Saturday morning in early May. The weather was crisp, the sky a clear blue that made the backyard look like it belonged in a postcard. I woke up earlier than usual, buzzing with excitement. I had stayed up late the night before baking cupcakes from a box mix funfetti, my favorite, and decorating them with pink sprinkles that didn't match, but made me smile. I'd even written my name on a paper banner, hanging it above the kitchen table with scotch tape that kept peeling off. I wasn't expecting much. Just a small celebration. Maybe a board game or two with Dad, and Sandra might actually let me pick the TV show that night. I had even cleaned the living room myself, dusting the coffee table and folding the throw blankets. Ethan was practicing upstairs. As always, those long cello notes filling the house like he was the star of some sad movie we were all stuck in. By 11 a.m., I'd changed into my favorite blue sundress and set the cupcakes in rows on a tray. I counted them twice, made sure the frosting wasn't sliding, and placed them gently in the fridge. Then I waited. Sandra came down first, dressed in a sleek black blouse and tan slacks, holding her planner like it was glued to her palm. "Where's your jacket, Jenna?" she asked, already zipping up her leather purse. "We need to leave in 15. "Leave?" I echoed, glancing at the banner. "But today's my birthday." She didn't look up. "Yes, honey, and we'll celebrate later this week. Ethan's competition is downtown, remember? Big day for him. We don't want to be late." I turned to Dad, who had just entered the kitchen, adjusting his tie. He paused, eyes catching the banner, then the cupcakes. His smile faltered. "I thought we'd do something after," he offered, already reaching for his car keys. "We'll get ice cream. Just us three. How about that?" I didn't respond, just nodded. My throat felt tight. Sandra pulled out a Tupperware from the cabinet. "Grab one cupcake for the road, Jenna. We can't have sugar all over the seats again." I picked the one with the broken candle, its pink wax bent sideways, and placed it carefully into the container. I didn't bother bringing a lighter. On the way to the car, my party dress caught the edge of a thorny bush and ripped slightly. No one noticed. The drive downtown was quiet, except for Sandra reminding Ethan not to overwork his wrist and checking the competition schedule aloud, twice. Ethan was polite as always, nodding, headphones in, completely absorbed. I sat behind him, clutching the cupcake container in my lap, watching the frosting melt slightly from the warmth of my hands. The traffic grew dense near the recital hall. Shiny cars lined the curb, parents unloading black instrument cases and adjusting bow ties. It looked like a scene from a magazine, polished and important. When we parked, Sandra turned around to face me. "You'll stay in the car, sweetie. Ethan needs to center himself. This performance matters, okay?" Dad didn't look at me. He opened his door without saying a word. I opened my mouth, just slightly, but said nothing. Words felt too heavy, too dangerous, like they might tip the delicate balance that kept the family from noticing I still existed. They left quickly, Ethan adjusting his collar, Sandra smoothing his hair like a stage mom. I watched them disappear through the glass doors of the recital hall. And then I waited. People passed by the windows, men in suits, women in floral dresses, kids with their hair slicked and violins in hand. The car smelled like vinyl and old French fries. I opened the cupcake container and stared at it. The candle had completely bent now, wilted in surrender. I held the cupcake up for a moment, then whispered, "Happy birthday" to me. Outside, the sun kept shining. Somewhere in the distance, a cello string hummed. I leaned back in the seat, quietly peeling away the cupcake wrapper, and took a bite without singing. I didn't cry. Not then. I just made a silent wish that next year, maybe someone would remember without needing a reminder. But even at 8, I knew better. They told me it was just for a year. A temporary arrangement. "We'll come back for you, Jenna," Dad said, pen in hand, signing papers he didn't bother to read aloud. I watched the ink dry on the dotted line beside the word placement. We were sitting in a small office at DSHS, the Department of Social and Health Services, on a rainy afternoon in March 2015. The air smelled like carpet cleaner and printer toner. I remember the chair was too soft, like it was trying to be comforting, but only made me sink in place. Sandra sat across from me, immaculate as always. She wore a navy trench coat and had her planner open on her lap, flipping through pages like she was scheduling a haircut, not my removal from their home. "We've found a good family," she said, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The Colemans come highly recommended. It's stable. And they have other children your age. You'll have company." I didn't say anything. I just looked out the window, counting the cars in the parking lot. "You'll have your own bed," Dad added awkwardly. "It's just until we settle in Vienna. Once Ethan's program starts and we get the housing sorted out, we'll bring you over. This is what's best for everyone." I'd heard that line before. A few nights earlier, I'd crept downstairs to get water and heard Sandra whispering in the kitchen. "Vienna's not a place for distractions," she'd said, voice tight. "We can't afford divided focus, not with Ethan's future on the line." I wasn't meant to hear it, but I did. And suddenly, I understood what distraction meant. Miss Tilda, the caseworker, entered the room holding a folder thick with paperwork. She was practical, neutral, neither kind nor cruel. "We're ready," she said. She spoke like a teacher collecting homework. I was handed a pen and shown where to initial. A yellow sticky note at the bottom of the page read, "Temporary. Reassess in 12 months. 12 months. It sounded manageable, like a long school project, but my gut knew better. The Colemans lived in a beige split-level house 10 miles south. They had 4 other foster kids, a rigid system, and a weekly dinner menu that never changed. My room had a bunk bed and a dresser with my name taped to one drawer. I was assigned morning bathroom time from 6:30 to 6:45 and told to label my shampoo. There were charts on the fridge, chore rotations, hygiene checklists, quiet hours. You earn points for behavior and could cash them in for things like nail polish or headphones. At first, I tried to win. I swept floors, helped set the table, avoided arguments. But after a few weeks, I realized points didn't mean kindness. The Colemans were consistent, not warm. Their love came in systems, not sentiment. And I was just another folder in their file cabinet. One day, I received a package in the mail. A snow globe. Vienna's opera house inside, with tiny flecks of white swirling around a gold dome. No card. Just a return address with an Austrian postal code. I held it in my hands for a long time, waiting for some note. Something handwritten. Something that said, "We miss you," or "We're thinking of you." There was nothing. I placed the snow globe on the shared bookshelf in my room. A week later, another girl accidentally knocked it over. It cracked at the base, leaking a slow trail of glitter water onto the carpet. No one noticed. That night, I logged onto the shared desktop in the kitchen, pretending to research for a history project. I went to Facebook. Their profiles were public. There they were, Mark and Sandra, dressed in black tie, smiling at a gala under a chandelier. Ethan stood between them, taller now, hair slicked back, holding his cello like a golden trophy. The caption read, "Proud Parents, Vienna Debut Week." I stared at the image until my eyes stung. Proud parents. I shut the computer down. Back in my room, I peeled the yellow sticky note from the inside of my dresser. Temporary. Reassess in 12 months. I crumpled it in my fist. "So much for temporary," I whispered, pressing the paper deep into the trash. And, just like that, I stopped waiting. I stopped counting the months. I stopped asking to be remembered. I learned that disappearing wasn't about vanishing. It was about becoming quiet enough no one had to acknowledge you were ever missing. At 15, I had two survival skills: how to write like I meant it, and how to vanish just enough to be left alone. Renton High School was big and loud and indifferent. The hallways smelled like bleach and cafeteria fries. There were security guards at the front door and motivational posters peeling off the walls, trying hard to matter. I'd been in 3 schools in the last 2 years, and this one wasn't the worst. But it wasn't home, either. By then, I'd already lived in 5 different foster placements. I kept a spreadsheet on a flash drive I wore around my neck. Each family had its own tab. Notes. Patterns. Their house rules, whether they labeled food, if they had pets or passwords on the Wi-Fi. I didn't write down feelings, only logistics. Feelings didn't help you get through math class or keep other girls from asking why your backpack looked like it came from Goodwill. Lunch was the hardest part of the day. Not the food, though it was bad, but the way the lunchroom hummed with social currency. Where you sat said everything. I chose not to sit at all. Instead, I asked the librarian if I could volunteer during lunch to shelve books or sort returns. Miss Kennedy wasn't particularly warm, but she appreciated quiet. That's how I ended up alphabetizing a shelf of battered paperbacks when Ms. Peterson walked in. She was new to the school, an English teacher in her 40s with a salt and pepper pixie cut and a silver bracelet that jingled when she wrote on the whiteboard. She wore scarves with Shakespeare quotes and didn't tolerate lazy grammar. That day, she was looking for a copy of The Things They Carried. "You're not in my class, are you?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm in Mr. Booker's." She studied me a moment. "You cataloging for fun or for credit?" "Neither. Just hiding." That made her laugh. It was dry but kind. "Well, if you ever want to hide somewhere warmer, my room's open during lunch. No attendance sheet, no questions asked." She left with her book and didn't press further. That's how I knew I could trust her. The next week, I started eating lunch in room 204. Miss Peterson kept the blinds half open and always had a kettle on the windowsill. Students came and went. Some were just there for makeup work, others for quiet. She didn't try to turn it into a club. She didn't ask for my story. She let me be. It was Miss Peterson who first commented on my writing. She returned an assignment with no red marks, but left a note in the margin. "You write like a CPA. Smart. Clear. But don't be afraid to bleed a little." I wasn't sure what she meant. Bleeding hadn't gotten me far, but that night, something tugged at me. I opened a blank Word doc and started typing. It came out in one go, an essay titled "The Cost of Being Left Behind." It wasn't dramatic, just honest. I didn't mention names, just facts. What it felt like to be transferred like paperwork. To wait for phone calls that never came. To watch strangers call your parents committed artists while you labeled your own shampoo in a shared bathroom. I submitted it anonymously to the school's creative writing contest and forgot about it. 2 weeks later, Miss Peterson held a printed copy in her hand. She stood in front of her class and said, "Today I'm reading a submission that arrived without a name. But it hit me hard, and I think it will hit you too. My chest tightened. She began reading, slowly, clearly, her voice softening in places I didn't expect. As she moved through the final paragraph, I thought my heartbeat might give me away. I sat in the back, pretending to sketch in my notebook, but I didn't hear pencil on paper, only her voice saying things I hadn't known I wanted someone else to say aloud. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then she said, "I don't know who wrote this, but I hope they know their story matters." And, just like that, I felt seen. Not because she knew it was mine, but because someone had made space for my silence and named it brave. That afternoon, I added a new tab to my spreadsheet. Under People Who Saw Me, I typed one name, Miss Peterson. I hadn't thought about her in months, maybe longer. But there it was, Sandra's name, bolded and untouched, sitting at the top of my inbox like it had never left. Subject: We need your help. For a moment, I thought it was spam. Some phishing scam pretending to be family, like a cruel joke. But the email address was real. Familiar. The same one from years ago when they still sent updates about Ethan's recitals in Vienna. Before the silence swallowed everything. I didn't click it right away. I just stared at the screen, my hand frozen halfway between the mug and my laptop. Jazz hummed softly from the smart speaker in the corner, but my pulse was louder. I finally opened the email with the kind of breath you hold before diving underwater. Dearest Jenna, I hope this message finds you well. I know it's been too long, and that's largely our fault. I'm writing because our family has encountered some difficult circumstances, and we're hoping you might be in a position to help us. The words blurred as my eyes scanned the rest. They'd lost their apartment in Vienna. Thomas, she still called him Dad in the email, though I hadn't in years, had been let go from the conservatory's admin team. Sandra's music students had dwindled. And Ethan? He was struggling emotionally, which was their way of saying things had gone sideways. We'd like to return to the US, but we have limited resources to do so. We're hoping you might consider assisting us with travel expenses and temporary housing while we reestablish ourselves. I stopped reading halfway through the paragraph that called my career impressive and my independence inspiring. My throat burned. It wasn't that they were reaching out. It was why. Not to reconnect. Not to apologize. They needed me. Behind the polished tone and soft framing, I recognized Sandra's real talent, rewriting the past as something reasonable. Logical. She called it distance. I called it abandonment. I closed the laptop without replying. Not yet. Later that afternoon, another email arrived. Different subject line. Different tone. From Ethan Morrison. Subject: I'm sorry. Jenna. I don't know what Mom and Dad wrote to you. I just wanted to reach out separately. No excuses. I was old enough to say something when they left you behind. I didn't. And I'm sorry. Whatever you decide, I get it. It was short. Raw. There was no request, no polished language. Just guilt and clarity. And maybe something close to remorse. I printed both emails. Set them side by side on my kitchen island. Sandra's was 3 paragraphs longer, filled with indirect phrasing and hopeful adjectives. Ethan's was 6 sentences of truth. Night and day. Lucas came home from his shift at the clinic to find me still in my hoodie, feet tucked beneath me on the bar stool, just staring at the papers. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. Want tea? He asked gently, already heading for the kettle. I nodded. When I told him what happened, I expected anger. Or outrage. What I got instead was quiet solidarity. He read both letters, rubbed the back of his neck, and finally said, well, they know who you are now. even if it took them 17 years. We didn't talk about what I should do. Not yet. The next morning, I sat across from Dr. Alvarez, arms crossed tightly over my chest. She always gave me space to start, so I didn't. For a full minute, we just sat. Her office smelled faintly of lavender and clean paper. Finally, I said, "She wants me to help." Like nothing happened. Like I wasn't 12 when they handed me over to a caseworker and drove to the airport. Dr. Alvarez didn't flinch. She never did. And what does helping mean to you now? I opened my mouth, closed it again. It means breaking the rule. The one I made when I left the last foster home, that I wouldn't let them back in unless they earned it. Her voice was soft. Has anything changed since then? I hesitated. Ethan's message. That changed something. Not enough, but something. She nodded. It's okay to reevaluate the rules we made to survive, especially when we're no longer in survival mode. A part of me wanted to delete both emails, pretend they never arrived. Another part, some quiet, wounded child still living somewhere in my chest, wanted to scream. To make them understand. To show them my apartment, my job, my life, and say, "Look what I built without you." But the loudest part of me, the one I'd cultivated with therapy, time, and deliberate grace, wanted clarity. That night, I sat beside Lucas on the couch, lights low, his hand resting lightly on my knee. "I'm thinking of writing back," I said. He didn't move. But if I do, I turned to look at him, letting the resolve settle in my voice. It's going to be on my terms. If they wanted help, they'd have to accept the fine print, just like any contract I'd ever written. It felt strange, typing an email to the people who once filled out paperwork to leave me behind. Now I was the one defining the terms. Not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Structure was safety. I'd written those words once in a high school essay, and they'd become my blueprint for everything that came after. I sat at my desk at the firm, blinds tilted to soften the late autumn sun. My inbox blinked quietly in the corner of the screen.